Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now, I am going to be talking about children and schools. Well, it's not so much me that's going to be talking about it. I have been contacted by a young mum who is very worried about the schooling in this country. We mentioned it in a video once before in which this lady responded to me. So without further ado, let's bring her on. Her name is Anna, and she's from the Midlands and the north of this country. We'll just be a little bit vague. Hello, Anna, how are you?
Hello, hi, fine, thank you.
Lovely to meet you, and thank you for coming forward to talk about your story, because this is clearly quite difficult, and also for children, it's quite tragic. So, I'm just going to get you to describe what's happened to your daughter and the steps that you've gone through and where we are now.
So my daughter's 12 years old, newly started at high school. She was at the beginning of a school life, to say, and she was attacked there was a gang of 20 girls that surrounded her. She was
20.
then attacked, 20 girls,
Yeah.
then attacked by three of the girls. She was punched, she was kicked, she was humiliated in front of the gang. She had somebody put a hand round her throat, squeezing onto a windpipe. When it happened, I wasn't even contacted by the school. They didn't even make me aware of it. It was my daughter that had rang me to say, Mum, can you come and pick me up? I'm really scared. These girls, obviously, their version was different, but there was a gang of 20 girls. They were all, cheering them on, kick her head in, just awful, really. She didn't know any of these girls. They were, in a high school. It was a brand new year where she only knew the kids that she'd gone up to school with. The
Yeah.
best friend was stood next to her at the time. She was terrified. She was laughing along with these kids who were kicking her head in. So not only was she assaulted at school, she also, because her gang of friends were a group of friends were so scared of these girls, she just lost friends. So she's completely isolated. The school, the response to it was these girls were given, I think, 3 days off school, back in school. They fully expected my daughter to be back in school the following day. When she'd come home from school after I'd picked her up later that night, she received threatening voice messages from the same girls who'd attacked her at school that day, saying, when you come back into school tomorrow, you're going to get jumped. My mates are going to be waiting for you at the school gate. We'll be waiting for you. I let the school know about this. Then I also rang the police. The police came round later on. I told them about the assault at school, and they just said, really, we can't go around arresting teenagers. The courts aren't interested in this sort of thing, which I wasn't too happy with. If I go into work and I get jumped and there's a gang of 20 people around, you'd fully expect that you'd report it and something would be done about it. It was just not even, sort of just straight over the head. So I did say that I wanted him to do something. So he said he'd go and have a look at the CCTV in school, which one of the teachers had described as being horrific. There was, they did catch the assault on CCTV, so they had evidence of the assault, and they knew who these girls were. The only thing that the police were interested in at the time was the voice message. They told me that it was malicious communication, which I didn't know that at the time. And they said that was punishable, an offence. So I seemed quite happy then that, at least one of these girls would be, some action taken
Yes.
against her at least. But after the police going to the school, they said they were happy with the outcome, that the school had dealt with it. For me, for these girls, a couple of days off school, they were like happy. They were putting things on, social media, congratulating each other, and it was like a bonding experience for them, really. So at the time, I was lucky because my mum was sat here, and just hearing the police say that they just weren't interested, the courts weren't interested, I just felt really, really let down. And then my daughter was expected to just go back into school and act, the following day, even with threats being made that she was going to be jumped the following day. So the teacher that I was dealing with at the time just sort of dismissed it as, we've contacted the parents of these girls. They're all on board. They understand the seriousness of the situation. So I just took that at face value at the time. You think
Mm.
the school is going to deal with it. So I was like, right, that's brilliant. If the parents know, then that's great. Hopefully, this should stop. So my daughter was really, after this had happened, just the colour went from her. She was upstairs. I was worried that, she was saying that she didn't want to be here anymore. I had to sleep by her side just to make sure that she didn't get up in the night and do something stupid. made contact with my GP. It was really difficult to get in with them. Then you're on the phone to, you've got to be referred to CAMS. And I know the pressures that the GPs are under and the health service, so I understand it's going to be a long wait. But I was just finding that when I really needed something at that moment, that it wasn't being offered to me. My daughter did go back into school after this assault and, sort of try and face up to it. We were told that, this is, really a shocking assault that's happened at school. The teachers know about it. These girls know to stay away. She went back in and she was just instantly confronted with some girl who was trying to start with her again. And I just felt very much like it was very much all for these girls to keep them in school at all costs. And I was just saying, what needs to happen before you're going to act it? It's not just one or two girls. It was girls that she didn't even know were coming up to her making threats. She was scared to walk down the corridor. She said her knees were shaking as she's walking down the corridor, all eyes on her. She did go back in, I'd say 2 more times before I just decided, after speaking with the school, that you had to prove every interaction. If they couldn't prove it, as in they didn't have the CCTV evidence, they weren't going to act on it. They just said that, that was that really. So I did make the decision then to deregister my daughter. I just felt it was safer. She wasn't safe at the school. And I've since found out the same group of girls have just moved on to another girl, and that's actively happening at the moment. And there is police involvement again. So it's not stopping, it just continues.
What a awful situation, and particularly, for a 12-year-old girl going into a new school, and the first thing that you encounter is this huge amount of bullying. I mean, 20 girls, and then your friends feeling that they're forced into it because they're just as scared and pleased it's not happening to them, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And of course, from a parent's point of view, it's just ghastly, because that's not what you put your child into school for.
No. I mean, we go and tell a grown-up. You'd think the police would be, these girls knowing the police were involved, they don't care. They really don't care, because no one is telling them that their behaviour is wrong. This girl was back in school. It's not just my daughter, the main person. It wasn't just my daughter. She's, we're hearing from different children now that she's doing the same to them, but the school seem to refuse to want to. I think if they would have just, a new year, set the tone, it's supposed to be zero tolerance. That I was told it was zero tolerance, and they were quite strict on other things like, oh, you've got 2 earrings in, we're going to clamp down hard on that. But you find when there's something, your actual safety in the school, it seems to be just, oh, we say we're zero tolerance, but yeah, this is happening again and again. How zero tolerance are you? You're not. That's what I was finding. It was a battle to try and get it. I didn't feel like they were on my daughter's side. It was more an imbalance where we got to keep this girl in the school at all costs. She's got complex needs. And I'm thinking, well, my daughter now is having to have private counselling. I've got to pay for that because, no 12-year-old should be saying that they don't want to be here anymore and they want to kill themselves. She's been isolated. She's got no friends. She can't go out in case she bumps into these children. I've got to think about moving house. It's affected the whole family massively. She's got a younger sister who's supposed to be going to that school. Now it's, she can't go to that school,
No, is it a big school?
It is a big school, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got large classroom sizes, one teacher and perhaps a teacher trainer or something coming in to assist, and lots of kids. I mean, I remember when I was at school, which is a long time ago now, unfortunately, and I was bullied, but it was just like one kid here and one kid there. I was used as a battering ram by about 3 or 4. It was right at the beginning of the new school. Throughout school there was bullying, and it was the 1970s, and things were a lot laxer. But these days, all of that, I mean, only today I had a letter with a stamp, and it must be one of the post office's stamps, and it says stop bullying. And yet it's clearly going on, and there must be many children who are being bullied and don't know necessarily how to talk to their parents about it, let alone the teachers at the school. And what you've described is so shameful from the school's point of view. But I mean, I absolutely gobsmacked when you said, 20 kids who were just ganged up over a one. So that begs the question, what's happening with society?
Well, that's why I contacted you, because until you think you're on your own with it. But I've told you recently, in my town, there's been a murder of a teenage girl that's been quite high profile in the papers, and it was, similar. Well, it was the same school that my daughter went to, and it's come out since that this girl was actually really badly bullied at this same school by gangs who were, I think they call it seat belting, where she had a backpack on and they're grabbing her off the stairs, by her bag. But again, by gangs of children who just, there's just no accountability. For me, if that was my child and I heard they were bullying somebody, I'd be mortified and I'd be on that straight away. But it just seems to be, oh, we're just going to keep waiting, and they just seem to just let it slide. They don't seem to take any action that sort of sends the message to the other kids that this is not tolerated, and we're not going to, if that girl who had done it to my daughter had been taken out of the school, there's absolutely no inconvenience to the bully. It's more the inconvenience. It's my daughter's life that's been turned upside down. This same girl is now, she's in the school, no disruption to her education whatsoever. Just doing it to somebody else and ruining their lives, and it just seems so unjust. Following this, I've contacted the police. I've asked them to review my case because I wasn't happy with the, just complete inaction. And I think when it starts off with them doing these kind of things, it's pushing the boundaries. They're seeing what they can get away with, and we're wondering why then we're seeing, knife crime and, them carrying weapons. And it's no wonder, because nobody's telling them at any stage that they can't do this, and they know their rights as well. They know it's just the attitude of, I'm untouchable, I'm a kid, I can do whatever I like. You say or do anything to me, and it's you, as an adult, it's you in trouble, and you can't protect your children. That is me. I feel like I've been unable to protect my daughter by contacting people who are supposed to be there to protect us.
Yeah, I mean, we often hear the stories, and I think it was pretty much true when I was a kid that a policeman could, cuff your child over the head, and it sounds archaic now, but it was that sense of, you've been a naughty boy, I'm going to take you home to your parents, and there was a sense of respect for people in authority, because people in authority could actually do something. But children, it does seem, you're quite right, that they feel that now they've got the law on their side, to the point that they're jeering at you, saying, well, you touch me and you've had it. And unfortunately, that's what happens. It must be awful for teachers as well, who are trying to control classes of unruly children. So you're homeschooling now your eldest.
Yes.
How's that going?
If it wasn't for the group that I joined on Facebook, the home education group, I think I'd be completely lost. When I deregistered my daughter, there was absolutely nothing that seemed to be available, as a guide of, what curriculum, what subjects, what should I be teaching my daughter at home. So they've been really helpful, not just with what I should be teaching, but also there's a massive social side to it, because that is the big worry, quite a negative reaction from people when I've told them I'm homeschooling. And one of the other mums I've spoken to at the homeschooling site, her mum just won't speak to her. She's saying, your daughter needs to be in school. And I completely agree. I think schools are, I'd like my daughter to be able to go to school. She herself has said she doesn't want to do homeschooling forever. She'd like to be back in a school. She wants just a normal life where she's going to school and her biggest worry should be homework. But when it's your child's safety, and you feel as though you're sending them into the wolves every day. And that's what other parents have. When I joined that group, it was really nice to hear people saying the same things that I've been saying. And I think until you've been through it yourself, you just can't understand, why somebody would take them out of education. So for us, it's not a long-term thing. I need to get her mental health right. Mental health right first, and that's doing the online the counselling and things until she's strong enough to go back into a school setting. Because I just don't think at the minute she could cope with something like that. She's been traumatized.
And I mean, presumably you've got time to do this. I mean, are you working, or you've got other commitments?
Yeah, so luckily for me, I've worked in a GP surgery for 15 years. I don't do full time, I am part time at the moment, and they've been really, really good with me, flexible. There is like an unused room in there, so in times when I've not been able to, if I'm working, my mum will come and sit with her and make sure she's doing what she needs to do. But if I ever need to, I can always just get her set up in the room in the laptop and nip in and check on her. So they've actually been really, really supportive. So
Oh,
that's
that's
been really helpful because I know not a lot of people do have that. So I've been really lucky that I've been able to do this.
and it's interesting you say that about your mum coming in because these days we've got families that are so split up
Yeah.
that not everybody's parents are able to just come in, and it just goes to show how important family is. How does your youngest feel about now going to school, seeing what your her sibling has gone through?
She's well, she's quite wary now
Mm,
of going to school. She's sad because she's got a group of friends, they're all going, and that was the school she was supposed to be going to. So the decisions, it's just affected every single aspect of our life because now my other daughter's going to definitely, be going to a different school. She'll never go to that school again. And
mm,
I'm having to have these conversations with my youngest now of, oh, all your school friends are going there, but you might have to start somewhere new where you're going to be, it's taking that chance away from her where she, I know not all children are bullied, and I know all, some children go to school and they absolutely love it and they go in and they don't have any problems. But when it's your child, and especially in a situation like this where there is a constant threat, because we've had caller withheld numbers ringing, again ever
mm.
since this, where it feels like it's ongoing. So again, it's even thinking of, should I move out the area? Should we start somewhere completely anew? So that's still open to discussion at the minute with my youngest. I'm really, every day it's like a wrestling match in your head because you want to give her that chance to go. And it's not to say it would happen to her, but I just
No.
feel like I now know how that school does react when you report that bullying's happening to your child, and they don't act on it in a way that it doesn't stop. And hearing from other parents with the same experiences as me, they're all saying the same thing. You're shouting out for help. It's time and time again. It's happening, and there's just no stop to it. There's no end to it until either someone, it ends in a tragedy,
Mm.
or you've got your child with long-term mental health condition. Then, because this could live with her for the rest of her life.
And the school itself is supposed to be taking on a legal guardianship of your child. It has its welfare at its number one consideration,
Well, yeah,
and obviously is failing in that, particularly if it's permitting these other children to continue to either attend the school or to bully. I suppose they're in a bit of a strange place because 20 girls suddenly, you know.
yeah,
And I guess there's a bit of a PR exercise from their point of view. They don't want this to suddenly be in all the news that it's an unruly school and they've got no control.
mm,
So one, I suppose, has to look at both sides of the story, but it's absolutely unacceptable
yeah.
in what's going on, and the failing of the police to sort of really get involved. You say that you might move. I mean, that's such a dramatic step to have to consider, isn't it?
Yeah.
For the fact of your children's their education, but also their mental health or physical health. Come to that.
Mm,
My sister homeschooled long time ago, and everyone thought she was a nutter. Even I did at the time, because I had three children, and she had three children, and mine went through the system, and they were okay. But my sister said at the time, and so I don't know how it is these days, there wasn't really a set curriculum. They basically, I said, well, what did you do? And she said, well, we didn't do really very much. The kids are sponges. They just ask questions. So I would take them out to places, and we would go to places, and they would ask questions about things. So they'd go to museums, and they'd go for walks, and then they would, say, oh, why is that building over there? Or what do you think this? And then she would implement whatever she knew, and because she's not a teacher,
yeah.
she is a nurse. But actually, the kids had an amazing schooling. Of course, there were three of them, so they were all together. So that really helped.
Yeah.
And then when it came towards the exam times, they had to do certain things. So they did go into, I suppose, a sixth form situation towards the latter end.
Yeah.
So they started off in primary school, so they had no sort of notion. They started off at primary school age, rather, so they had no notion of what school is. Now,
Yeah.
presumably, your daughter's they've gone through that schooling system. They've built up those friendships, so it's a difficult place. How is your daughter faring then with mum desperately trying to help out and
Well,
teach?
again, I think she's actually enjoying it, and I think things might have moved on since obviously your sister was doing it. Everything, there's quite some really helpful online resources on there. So there's Maths Genie, there's Oak Academy. These are maths and English, the core subjects, and they do have lessons on there in relation to your child's age. So they're really, really helpful. She's doing Duolingo. She's learning Spanish now.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so things that she wasn't doing in school. And she actually said to me, Mum, I feel like because it's, in the classroom, sometimes there's so much noise and there's kids in the class that the teacher's trying to keep in, stop throwing chairs around, it's the focus on. She's quite relaxed in the learning now. So she's finding that she's learning quite well. And obviously the subjects that she is more interested in that we can really focus on. She loves art. She's learning to crochet. She's thinking of starting her own crochet business. There's things that they don't teach in school and there's so much available online, but without the home education, as I say, without that group that I've joined, I found that real benefit to me, because we did go along to a social meet and she met kids there. She was thinking it was just her. She's met a friend there that she's been in contact with. They've gone to the special days that they do for home education kids. They do ice skating, they can go true ninjas, and they're getting that social side as well, which they do miss out on school. So I think for me, I was just the same as you. I'm the last person that I thought would have ever been homeschooling. During COVID, because I'm a key worker, I was like, thank the Lord I can send my children into school, because I had friends who were homeschooling saying, I'm on a call and, I've got to do this. And it's a full timetable. So and with the maths and English, obviously they're the main ones that are really important. And there's the Kit McGrath, they can do the maths and English, but also when they get to age 14, they can actually go and do maths and English in one of the colleges, a local college. So that prepares them for the GCSEs. So there is a lot out there. If you look, it's not offered to you at the time. I found the school just like, right, deregister, wash your hands of her, see you later. I've had to go out and find that. But luckily, when you do join them, they're so welcoming, and you put any query in and you'll get all these messages back that I found really, really helpful. And she's actually, I felt, benefited from that, which was sort of when we were going through all this such horrible time, it was like, oh, thank you. You know what I mean? It was great. It was really good.
It's absolutely incredible that they are homeschooling. People are coming forward. They're very, very helpful. All the things that you would imagine a school ought to be like.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and yet you've had the complete opposite, as if they're not really interested one iota in your child. And your child seems to be excelling in the work that she's doing and finding many more interests than perhaps a more narrow curriculum it would normally send her. So that sounds really promising. Yeah. And how are you and your daughter? You must be bonding together really well.
We've always been really close, and I find that she can talk to me. She tells me probably more than she should tell me. I'll say to her, you don't need to tell me everything. But yeah, we are really close, and it's definitely brought us closer. You're both protective over your children, especially now, and especially where I live. After this has happened, you're noticing more and more. I went to the shopping centre last night. There's a big group of kids there with the black hoods and the scarves up to the nose, and they were riding push bikes through the shopping centre, where they're being unchallenged by security because people are scared, aren't they, to say anything. So yeah, I just feel like she's safe at the moment, and that's keeping me going, kind of thing. I would be really worried at the moment as would she, if I hadn't pulled her out of that school. I know that I've definitely made the right choice in doing what I've done with her.
So in terms of anybody watching this who is in a similar situation, even if it's not the bullying thing, but they're just really worried that their child is not being appreciated by the school or looked after by the school, or doesn't quite fit in for some reason, or have issues talking to teachers. I certainly had that with my kids when they were at school, that the teachers would be desperately pushing them in one direction or expecting certain things, and I would be questioning what they were doing, and they would just treat me like a pupil,
Yeah.
having that conversation. They're so used to talking down to people. It's like, hang on a minute, I'm an adult as well. We're talking
Yeah.
one to one. What would be your advice? Would you recommend homeschooling?
I don't want to say I'd recommend it, because for me, if this hadn't happened to my daughter, I think there's things that can be worked through or discussed with the school. But I feel like when it impact it, particularly when it's impacting their safety and you feel like they're unsafe, I would say 100% is something you should look at. And you sort of feel as though, and I doubted if I was doing the right thing for weeks. I sort of cut off contact, where I was thinking in my mind, what am I doing the right thing here? Because it's a big step to
Yeah, absolutely.
make that decision to take your child out of school. And it's not a decision that's taken lightly. And as I say, not everyone is in the same situation as me, where I do have support. I'm lucky that I can do this with my daughter. I feel for me personally, I feel like if you feel like you've exhausted all avenues and you are constantly asking for the help and you're being pushed aside and not listened to, then I think, yeah, it is something that you should consider. As I say, for my daughter, she's saying that she does eventually want to go back to a school. So even if it's just for the short term, because for her, it's just getting her back to being the child she used to be before that happened for me, getting her confidence back up and getting her to realise, you can make new friends. But she's got that support in the home learning as well. So I think it's just realizing that if it is something you're going to do, it is not the end of the world, as some people seem to see it as. And I know there is quite a negative reaction when you do say that you're being homeschooled. They're like, what?
Yeah.
I was that person as well. Like, what? I just send them to school. But yeah.
And let me just ask this then, as we sort of come to the end. What's the motivation like? Because my girlfriend has problems getting her kids up to go to school. And I remember that with my 13-year-old, particularly my youngest at the time. He just would not get up. I mean, he just would not get up, and it was this huge, come on, we've got to get you in, and all of this. So what's it like first thing in the morning when it's a school day at home?
Well, it's more relaxed than a normal school day, but I
Yeah.
do, the motivation for her to get out of bed is I've got a waffle maker. So we're like, get up and have Belgian waffles.
That's there you go. Appeal to the child's better nature. There we go. Yeah. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Well, Anna, it's so lovely and refreshing to know that, to the horror of the story, which, as you said, it could have panned out a lot worse, that you've been in a position where you're very fortunate with your job and how things have panned out, that you can, and that it's an experience that is still enjoyable, but it's not necessarily the end of the line, that she will go back into some form of education. Do you think that you might educate the other child to begin with?
I mean, for me, no, I feel if she wants to go into school, there's no issues. That it's only because I've had this issue that
Right.
I've done this. I'm not just an advocate for pull your kids out of school and home educate. If they're going to school happily and they're happy, I think that is the thing. Your child should go to school. They should be safe at school. And the biggest worry should be, oh, I've got a lot of homework this week, not, oh, there's a gang of girls that are going to jump me when
No,
I get to school, feel threatened.
absolutely.
That's purely my motivation. But I am continuing to, I mean, I've got a meeting hopefully a meeting coming up with my MP soon. Just no one wants to listen, but I'm going to keep going with this. And
Yes.
That's why I've contacted you. So thank you for getting in touch with, replying to me.
Well, I'm sure in the comments there'll be lots of people who are either in the same situation, done something similar, or have got some advice. And if anybody wants to email me that they want to sort of send to you, I can forward to you if they've got something constructive to say. You mentioned the homeschool network. That's been very, very helpful. And I guess there are all sorts of networks all over the place, presumably, for people who end up going down that line or choose to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it's brilliant. Well, Anna, thank you so much for talking to us. I'm really pleased that you brought it to our attention. And I wish you the best of luck, especially with the MP, to see if you can't get somewhere further. And I mean, it seems a shame, a real shame, that society has dropped to this level where kids have lost respect for everything. I don't know what the answer is. Do you?
But there needs to be a deterrent. That's the answer. At the minute, there is no deterrent. They are out there doing and saying whatever they like with no accountability. No one's telling them, wait a minute, you cannot do this. So I think there needs to be something that they're not going to want. There's got to be a reason for them not to do it. And at the moment, there is no reason. So it's no wonder.
Brilliant. Anna, thank you so much for talking to us, and good luck with it all. Well, there you are, ladies and gentlemen. I will be back hopefully with another interview very soon. But in the meantime, thanks for watching.